Hi guys, in this lesson we are going to cover lesson 2.2, solving one-step equations. By the end of this lesson you should be able to solve equations by using addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Take into account this is only one step, so that's all we need to do. Now we're kind of doing the same thing here as we do with order of operations, okay? But when we solve, we do order of operations backwards, okay? So if we think about PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. I'm working PEMDAS backwards. Okay, now this doesn't really matter as much with one step because it's just one step. I know automatically I just need to undo one step, but it is going to matter for Wednesday's lesson when we cover 2-3 solving multi-step equations. Okay, so let's look at example 1, solve by adding. So here all we're going to do is add to solve the equation. Now notice what I want. When I'm solving an equation, I need to make sure that what I do to one side, I do to the other side as well. We want to keep the sides equal. So what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. If I add to one side, I have to add that same amount to the other side. So here I have C minus 22 equals 54. Now, I want my variable, in order to solve, I want my variable by itself. So I want this one side, this left side of this equation, to just have C on it. Okay, so I have to get rid of this negative 22. The way that I get rid of this minus 22 is if I add it. I'm going to add 22 to both sides of the equation. Now, if I do it to this side, to the left side, I have to do it to the right side of the equation as well. Now why we're adding instead of subtracting when I have this subtraction is I need to undo it. Okay, so I want 0 to be on this side. So I have negative 22 plus 22, that's going to give me 0 here. Or it's just going to leave me with C on the left side. So I have C equals, and then I'm going to add 54 and 22, which is 76. So to solve that equation, I have C equals 76. Now, I like to go back through and make sure, check my answers by plugging C back in. So I get C equals 76. Well, if I plug it back in, 76 minus 22, does that give me 54? Well, 76 minus 22 is 54, so I get 54 equals 54. So yes, 76 is my answer. Okay, for B, I have 113 equals G minus 25. I want G by itself on the right-hand side, so I'm going to have to get rid of this minus 25 by adding it to both sides. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. And that cancels out the 25s, and I get G equals 113 plus 25, which is 138. Now I can check this by going 113, and where I have G, I'm going to plug in that 138. Well, I get 138 minus 25, that is 113. So I get 113 equals 113. And that works. Okay, C, I have J minus 87 equals negative 3. So here I have, I'm going to add 87 on both sides. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So that negative 87 is going to cancel out with the positive 87, and I get J equals a negative 3 plus 87, or 87 minus 3 is going to be 84. So I can go back through and plug J back in. So I have 84 minus 87 equals negative 3. Well, 84 minus 87 is negative 3, so I get negative 3 equals negative 3, and that works. Try D on your own. So go ahead and pause the video and try it on your own. Okay, after you tried it, you add 12 to both sides, should get h equals -15. Okay, now if I plug this back in, I get -15 minus 12 equals -27. And I get -27 equals -27, and that works. Okay, now let's solve by subtracting. So here I'm doing the opposite, so I need to undo it. So here I have a positive 63 plus m equals 79. So in order to undo this positive 63, I'm going to subtract 63. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other side of the equation. So I get m equals 79 minus 63, which is 16. Now I always like to check my answers. It's easy with one step, but when we get to multi-step equations, it's really important to actually check your answers. So I have 63 plus 16 equals 79. I get 63 plus 16, that's 79. So I do have 79 equals 79. That works. For B, I'm going to subtract 27 from both sides. And I get K equals 3. Now if I plug this back in, I get 27 plus 3 equals 30. So 27 plus 3 is 30, so 30 equals 30, and that works. So K equals 3 is my solution. For part C, I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. Remember, what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. The way that I undo addition is I use subtraction. So I get negative 28 equals P. Now if I plug this back in, I have a negative 28 plus 16. Negative 28 plus 16 is indeed negative 12, so that works. Okay, pause the video and try D on your own. Okay, for part D, you should have subtracted 102 from both sides. You get C equals negative 66. If I plug this back in, I get negative 66 plus 102, and that does give me positive 36. Okay, solve by multiplying or dividing. Now, I'm trying to get Q by itself. I'm trying to get the variable by itself, so this 2/3 is in the way. I'm multiplying by 2/3. So the way that I actually get rid of, if you see a fraction attached to a variable, so I have 2/3 attached to G. If you see a fraction attached to a variable, what you're going to do is you're going to multiply by the reciprocal of that fraction. So remember, the reciprocal is I'm just going to flip the fraction. So I'm going to multiply by 3 over 2. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I'm also going to multiply the other side by 3 over 2. Well, that cancels out the 3's and the 2's on this side. So I'm left with Q, which is what I want. And then I have 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4. So I get Q equals 3/4. Now to check this, I can plug it back in. I get 2/3 times what I had for Q, which is 3/4, equals 1/2. Now, if I look here, these 3's cancel out, and I'm left with 2 over 4. Does 2 over 4 equal 1/2? Yes. So that works. Q equals 3/4. For part B, I see that I'm multiplying by -3. Now, if I'm multiplying by a -3, I'm going to undo multiplication with division. So I'm going to divide by a -3. What that does is I have -3 divided by -3. That turns into 1r. And I know that 1r is the same thing as just r. So if I delete that 1, then I'm just left with r. Okay, so those 3's cancel out, and I'm left what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I have 39 divided by -3, which is -13. So I get r equals -13. Now, if I plug it back in, I get -13 times a -3. That's going to give me a positive 39. So r equals -13. For C, again, I have a fraction, okay? And so I want to do it in one step because these are one-step equations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of the fraction. So I'm just going to flip it. 5 divided by 3, or multiply by 5 over 3. I'm going to do that to both sides. And I get k equals 6 times 5 is 30 divided by 3, which is 10. Make sure you always simplify if you can. If I plug this back in, I get 3/5 of 10. Well, I have 3 times 10 is 30, divided by 5, which is indeed 6. So I get k equals 10 as my answer. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and try D. Okay, for this video, for D, I am trying to get B by itself. So I need to get rid of this 2/3 that I'm multiplying by. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 3 over 2. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So that's going to cancel out on this side. I'm going to be left with B. And I get 3. Oh, sorry, this should be a 2. So I have 3 times a -1 is -3. Then I have 2 times a 4, which is 8. So I get B equals -3 over 8. Now if I plug that back in, I have 2/3 of -3 over 8. So I have 2 times a -3, which gives me a -6. 3 times 8, which gives me 24. And this equals -1/4 if I simplify. So that it does give me what I wanted in the on the other side. Okay, we can also solve real-world equations by writing equations and then solving those. So of a group of 13 to 15-year-old girls surveyed, 225, or about 9/20ths, said they text while they watch television. How many girls were surveyed? So when I solve word problems, I want to go ahead and read the problem through and then figure out what it's asking me to find. Okay, so what it's asking me to find is how many girls were surveyed. So the total number of girls surveyed. Well, it says 225 said that they text while they watch television. Now, I also know that is equal to 9/20ths of the total number of girls that were surveyed because 225 equals 9/20ths, okay? So I can solve this like a regular equation now. So I see this as a fraction, so I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, so I'm going to multiply by 20 over 9, and I'm going to do that to both sides. And I get a total of 500 girls were surveyed. Okay, B, Allison is making a stained glass window. Her pattern requires that 1/5 of the glass should be blue. She has 288 square inches of blue glass. If she intends to use all of her blue glass, how much glass will she need for the entire project? So this problem is very similar to the one before. It's saying that I have 288 inches of blue, and I need 1/5 of it to be blue. So that 288 inches equals 1/5 of the entire project, the total square inches of glass. So what I can do is I can solve this problem. I can multiply by the reciprocal. Now, the reciprocal of 1/5 is just 5 over 1, or I can multiply by 5. And I get the total amount of glass is 1,440. And then don't forget your units, square inches. Now I want you to try the last problem by yourself. The last problem is a little bit different. Okay, C, I have Ricardo is driving 780 miles to Memphis. He drove about 3/5 the distance on the first day. About how many miles did Ricardo drive? So he's driving a total of 780 miles to Memphis. So that's my total amount. Now he drove about 3/5 of the distance on the first day. So he drove 3/5 of the distance on the first day. So I'm looking for the amount of miles he drove on the first day. So I'm going to take the total amount of miles and multiply that by the fraction that he drove. So I have 780 times 3/5. And that gives me 468 miles.